Hello, my name is Kim and welcome to the Embroidered Elephant channel. Today I am going to be giving you 12 tips on how to keep your sewing room or craft room organised. So as a fellow sewer, I know how difficult it can be to keep a room organised, especially when you've got so much fabric or so much yarn or just so much stuff. And usually we use a lot of different tools, so it can be quite difficult to keep everything together and to keep it workable. I know that quite a few of these tips have helped me to organise my room better and to help me spend less time tidying up and more time creating. So let's get started. Tip number 1 is to destash and declutter often. So have a look through your tools, find what you don't use or no longer use or isn't fit for purpose anymore. Maybe it's broken or past its best. Have a look through your stash, find what is inspiring, think about what is no longer inspiring you or that you won't use anymore, and get rid of all of the stuff that is past its best. You can either throw these away, try not to feel too guilty about this. Your craft room is meant to be inspiring for you, but where you can, of course, give them to a loved one, donate them to charity, find causes that could use them, even go to schools potentially. They are usually looking for new supplies, so you could be helpful to someone else. This will also help you keep your stash under control and limit the amount of stuff in your room, hence making it easier to organise. I personally find starting with tools is easier because it either works or it doesn't. I either use it or I don't, compared to materials and yarn, which for me is always fit for purpose. I can always find something that I can use it for. It's just a question of how much I love it or will I actually use it, which makes it more difficult. So start with easy and then move on to more complicated things when you've got the willpower crack down. Tip number 2 is plenty of storage. First part of this tip is to utilise what you already have. If you have a bookshelf somewhere else in your house that's you're not getting the best use out of, try that in your craft room if you've got space. Chests of drawers, old tables, etc. You can find a lot of things around the house or quite cheaply on Facebook, in charity shops, thrift stores, etc. for relatively cheap. Just find something that you feel that will work for you. Doesn't need to be pretty, especially to start off with. Just finding a solution that holds all of your crafting supplies is the first step. Different people use various ways to organise their fabric. So I personally fold all of my fabric up, and I also use cardboard as well. So I have cut out cardboard rectangles, I fold my fabric around the rectangles and utilise them like that. But find something that works for you. Some people use plastic storage boxes and that works fine for them. Also utilising spare jars that you have around the house. You know, once you finish with your Nutella or your jam or whatever it may be, using the clean jar to hold buttons or spare fabric or scraps or pins, anything that you can think of. As said, you can go on Pinterest and find something that looks absolutely beautiful for a lot of money, but you can also make something work with the money that you have got or the supplies that you have got already. Number 3 is to utilise so-called dead space. What I mean by dead space is, for example, having hangers on the backs of doors to store your fabric or your works in progress, or having drawers under your desk that if there's some spare space, you can just pop them under and it won't impact the way that you use your space. Another idea is to utilise wall space by having pegboards to organise different tools or fabric or different bits, having shelves or having hangers as well. And lastly, using trolleys. So you can get plastic trolleys relatively cheaply online or in certain shops. If you put your tools or your most used materials or your works in progress, etc. in the trolley, then as you go around your room, as you go to various different rooms with your project, you have everything you need in there and it's easy to get a hold of. It's easy to use. It slots under desks or in spare rooms, and they don't tend to be that thick. They tend to be pretty slim. Tip number 4 is to limit the amount of books and magazines that you have in your house. So I am a sucker when I see a magazine and it's for a good price, usually in charity shops. I will grab it if there's 1 or 2 projects that catch my eye. However, these 1 or 2 projects and 1 or 2 magazines quickly add up, and they take up a shelf, 2 shelves, 3 shelves even. One way to work through this is to only keep the books that really inspire you, that you like several projects from, not just 1 or 2, and to keep the books or the magazines that you refer to frequently. Anything else, where possible and legal, I would advise that you photocopy the patterns that you like and keep them in a book. Same as for a magazine, if there's only 1 or 2 projects that really catch your eye, photocopy them and you can keep these in a binder together. Where it's not legal to photocopy, you could consider, I know some people might not like this, is to tear out the pages, rip the pages out of the projects that you like, and once you've done this you can either get rid of the magazines or the books or donate them. One extra tip I have is that any digital patterns that you buy, if you haven't printed them off or you don't plan on printing them off, say for example it's a crochet pattern that you can work from online, is to try to ensure that you have copies of these. So back up the patterns. 1 copy could be on your computer or on your email. Keep another copy on a thumb drive or a hard drive to ensure that even if the worst happens, you've got a backup and you've still got your money's worth. Having all of your patterns on a thumb drive or a hard drive also saves a lot of room, because a memory stick is very small compared to all of the magazines that I have in my shelf at the moment. Tip number 5 is when you are organising everything, make sure that you give it a label, particularly if you are using plastic boxes or drawers. Have a little label that says tools, scissors, red fabric, pink fabric, cotton, jeans, etc. However you want to organise your stash, whether it is by project type or whether it is by material, have everything labelled so that it is easy to grab or refer to, maybe in a few weeks, couple of months after you've organised everything. The labels can be printed, they can be colour coded, whatever works for you. I personally just write on sticky labels and pop them on my drawers. It's quick to do, it's easy, and it works for me. Number 6 is workspace organisation. So if you are lucky enough to have a dedicated room or a space to your craft, I would recommend organising your crafts. What I mean by this is similar crafts go together. If you are interested in painting and sewing and something else, keep all of your painting supplies together in one place so that they're easy to refer to, and keep all of your sewing stuff together. Number 7 is to have inspiration boards. Now I love to create these online and to print them out and have them on my wall. This helps me to keep in mind my inspiration, what I would like my projects to look like, what I'd like my stash to look like, any ideas that I have for new projects, some of the material that I want to use for those specific projects. Having them all on an inspiration board that you can regularly refer to helps keep you inspired and accountable as well. If, for example, you want to minimise your stash, or if you want all of your stash to look a certain way, for example, particularly neutral or very bright. It helps you keep to your ideal stash, or it helps you keep to your goals. Another way that I keep my inspiration is by having a list on the wall, which you can semi-see, of all of the projects that I've got in mind to do. By having them on the wall as a checklist, again, it helps me feel inspired when I achieve them, and it helps me stay focused for what needs to be done. Number 8 is keeping an inventory of your stash. So I find digital works best for me. I use an app called Notion. A lot of people use Ravelry for crochet or yarn related crafts. Some people use spreadsheets, some people use scrapbooks. Find what works for you and stick to it. I find digital works best for me because it is very easy to update my stash as and when I add new things or use things. If I've got a different amount in my stash than I started with, I can add photos to it as well and any notes. Some people prefer scrapbooks where they can see what stash they've got, what the project is that they are aiming to use it for. They cut out a little corner of the fabric or the yarn and have it there just so that it's easy to reference. I personally don't like doing this because once I've cut out a little corner, there's a part of the fabric that I won't be able to use. So, but it's down to preference, of course. Number 9 is to keep track of your works in progress. These are projects that you've started but have not finished yet. Keeping track of all the WIPs that you've got means that it is easier to finish them, and hopefully it inspires you to finish them as well. Go through and keep a log of all of them and regularly go through them. Projects that you can undo, seam rip or frog if they are crochet or knitting projects. Make a note of what's nearly completed, etc. Just because you've started a project and you've invested quite a bit of time or money into it, it does not mean that you have to finish it. It can be difficult to actually do. However, just because you have spent a lot of time on something, if you no longer enjoy the project, or you no longer wish to finish it, or you know you were making it for someone that you're no longer in contact with, whatever the reason is that you don't want to finish it, try not to feel too guilty about this. So there are various ways to get rid of them. You can either, as said, unstitch them, seam rip them so that you can put the material back in your stash and use it for something else. You can reuse it if you've started making a patchwork blanket and you haven't got enough squares for a whole blanket. You can make a cushion or a bag. You can rip back all of your yarn so that again you can add this to your stash to use for another project, or you can give it to a loved one or give it to charity or sell it online. There are various ways to get rid of it. Don't feel as though you have to finish it once you've started. The enjoyment was in buying the stuff and planning for the project. Another way to get rid of WIPs is to just finish them. Just bite the bullet and get it done. So one way that I find is quite easy for this is to say to myself, is to set a goal that I will do a project I like after I've done X amount of time doing the project I dislike. So for example, I will spend 20 minutes sewing a project that I don't really like anymore before I can move on to one that I really, really want to do. This helps you because once you get into the groove, sometimes you will continue getting in there and it will continue being enjoyable for you, or time will get away with you. Otherwise, if you sew quite regularly, you will hopefully get that done relatively quickly. I tend to keep a written to-do list of the projects that I've got to do on my wall, which helps keep me accountable and helps keep me focused on what I need to get done and when. Another way to ensure that they are sort of on your mind is to keep them close to you. Keep them in a bag by your desk. Keep them in a box. Keep them in a clear box so that you can see it. Keep it where you keep the rest of your stash. Keep it somewhere that you can see them so that you regularly feel inspired to get them done. Think of the end goal with all of your projects. And easier said than done, try to finish projects before you start new ones. This limits the amount of stress that you may feel or the anxiety with finishing so many projects once they're on the go. Number 10 is to keep a bin in your room, and you can also stretch to a couple of bins. So one can be for all the threads or the fabric or the tiny little bits that you will not use. It's better to put them straight in the bin rather than put them on the floor and leave them to sort out another day, and it's better than sort of shifting them to the side on your desk. The second bin can be used, or the second storage can be used for all the little scraps that are too big to be thrown. So different people use scraps for different things. I would recommend thinking hard as you're doing the project about which of the scraps you will use and which of them are too small. If you have decent sized scraps that you would not want to use for anything else, keep them to the side and you may be able to donate them or give them to someone else or sell them even. If they are a decent size and you feel as though you could do projects with them and you feel inspired by them, by all means pop them in a box, try and organise them in some way and just get them off of your desk. Keeping them on your desk for too long, they'll become part of the furniture and they'll just sit there. If you're anything like me, that is. So it's better to put them in a designated box and move them off the desk as and when you start creating the scraps. And again, try and be realistic about whether you will actually use them. Try not to keep them because you feel guilty about the amount of waste that you're creating. Keep them instead if you're feeling inspired to use them or you want to challenge yourself. Number 11 is to find your own groove. So everybody has different ways of doing things, everybody has different ways that works for them, and everyone's rooms are relatively different as well. What I can fit into my room, maybe you could fit more or less into yours. What works for me might not work for you. Trial and error is the best way to organise your room. You can try a specific style or try a specific piece of furniture. It may not work for you, change it. See if there is something else that works better for you. The room will constantly be evolving. What works for you last year might not work for you this year. Pinterest and YouTube have great resources for inspiration, but they can only go so far. Everybody's room is shaped differently, everybody's room looks different, everybody's needs and time, etc. is different, so make the room work for you. Number 12 is regularly clean and organise your room. Regularly cleaning and organising your room makes it easier to keep on top of. When you are halfway through a project, or whether it's been a busy season, i.e. Christmas, you may find that your room gets very, very messy, or there's fabric everywhere, the desk is not clear, etc. The more you keep on top of your room, the more regularly you tidy it and clean it, the nicer it will be to come in and the easier it will be to start a new project or continue with the projects that you have. There are various ways of organising your room. So for example, with your works in progress, you could put these in a plastic wallet or a plastic box, put it away after you've finished it and then come back to it. Regularly tidy the floor as well. There are threads everywhere. The more and more you cut, obviously the more fabric will be on the floor. Try and keep on top of this to prevent it from spreading. For example, I know that when I have been having a cutting session of all of my fabric, if I don't clean it right there and then or pretty soon after, I find little bits of fabric everywhere, all around my house, on the furniture, etc., where they've stuck to my socks or my trousers and I've wandered them around the house. Keeping on top of it makes for a nicer sewing room and it makes a nicer environment and more inspiring as well. So those were my 12 tips to organise a sewing or craft room. Thank you for watching my video. If this is something that you have enjoyed, feel free to leave a comment below with any tips that you may have, and feel free to subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and until next time, bye.